Steve, episode 37 of the Broadway block. Trade deadline came and went. Are you happy with it? Did you wish we did more moves? We're here with 85 points, tied with the Pens. Got a huge game coming up with them this weekend. Um, Only three behind the Canes. You think we're going to catch them? What are you most excited for after the trade? Trying to catch the Canes or the people we got?
So our current playoff prediction is obviously I feel like we're gonna make it, and where we sit is more like an afterthought. I think home ice advantage in the first two spots in the division would be nice, but nothing like game changing. I feel like we're a really well traveled team, and that shouldn't really matter too much. Pretty excited about the deadline, man. I feel like we didn't call it as far as the who's and the where's, but as far as what we got, I feel like we were definitely spot on. Some veteran role defensemen, some third, fourth line type characters, and some that have a little bit more grit, some that have a little bit more finesse. And I'm pretty excited about Cop. I feel like the trade is very similar to like a Blake Coleman type addition, knowing what we need to strengthen that middle six. And until Kako comes back, one of them being either Vetrano or Cop, or maybe even Hunt, will slide back into that spot.
Did we give up too much for Cobb? Did you hear about the conditions? I think if he plays 50% and we make the Eastern Conference Finals, it turns into a first.
So again, I think similar to the Bolts, it's like, we know what we have. Like the top echelon of players is pretty well established. I'm not calling us the Bolts, by the way, but knowing that we have a hot goalie and they did the same, sort of seeing like, what do we need to make this more of a thing? They go out and they get a guy like Pat Maroon. Obviously I'm not his biggest fan, but you can't really deny what the guy's done for not only the Blues, but for the Bolts. But I think when you go out and you specifically hand select, like this is the guy I want for this specific job, you're giving up. And they gave up Sergachev, or not Sergachev, Nathan Foote rather, a high draft selection and a first round selection, they being the Bolts, to acquire Coleman, who was on more of a team-friendly contract at like 1.8 or something like that. Obviously, we're eating Cop, but he is also unrestricted free agent.
He's just a rental, right?
Right. So, I mean, these trades are different. But I think, somebody had mentioned Adam Fox as a price point thing to gauge it. When you're giving up 2 second rounders, it's different regardless of where you are in the season and what you're getting coming back. I feel like Drury knows that he can sign this guy if he goes out and makes a trade with such a large condition. Worst case scenario, we're trading a late first round pick for a conference final finish for a guy that maybe walks in the offseason. So, I mean, yeah, you can say that there's some bad things about the trade, but I think in a best case scenario, we do a little bit of damage in the playoffs. I'm not trying to rain on our parade, but let's say we don't make the conference finals and we win a couple, or a round rather, and we're happy with that, and Cop ends up signing for a team-friendly deal, then all's well that ends well. But I think in the end, we're getting a well-rounded player coming off a season where he scores 39 points in 55 games. So he clearly is an NHLer, and where he happens to lie in that middle six, we'll see. But the lineups coming in tonight are pretty unsurprising. So what are you excited about? About mostly what we got. What are you excited about what we got?
What we got? Well, me and you mentioned that we're excited for that fourth line. Goodrow, Reeves, and Mott. Like that's gonna be a good fourth line. Like we know from fantasy hockey that Tyler Mate is he's a good player. He gets hits. He's always in the action, and he scores. I think he started his season either injured or dealt with some kind of COVID, so he came back in a little later. So I don't think he really got going as much as he did last year. So which is probably good for him for a change of scenery. With all the trades, I didn't think that we gave up that much to get, and we didn't rock the house too much, meaning we didn't change the chemistry that's already buzzing over here. We only added to that. So I'm really excited for that. People are upset that Morgan Barron might have been thrown into that trade, but we really don't have a place for him. We've seen that. He's come up and he's done what he's supposed to when we've needed him. But again, we're pretty good back there. So I'm okay with seeing someone like that go to get a Cop. Boteto, another trade that happened was Boteto, straight even trade, Boteto for Nick Merkley. He was when he came into the league a couple of years ago, pretty highly ranked prospects. So we'll see how that turns out. That's just like a safe bet kind of thing. Potato kind of fell into the same place as Morgan Barron, where when we needed him, he was there, but we didn't really have a place for him. So I'm excited with the trades to see the depth we got from it, and I'm hoping that helps out. Like you mentioned, with Cackle on the right being out, it looks like he could be out maybe even April too, him and Rooney. We're going to need some depth, especially as the season keeps going. So I'm excited for those players, and I like Justin Braun. I think he's a good defenseman, so I'm excited to see that. Maybe Nemeth gets out of there for a little bit.
I think the thing too is we're gonna lose somebody anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Yeah, we're gonna lose people like this too, and even back to the whole cop thing. You and I spoke previously before this that what happens if we can't sign Strome? Strome thinks his value is higher than what we could really give him, and with his production a little lower, and obviously seeing, I wouldn't want to say Panarin's productions are lower, but when we kept thinking that Ryan Strome and Panarin were like a tag team, like Panarin was scoring a lot more. So we don't see that as much from Panarin. We're getting a lot of assists, and he still is scoring and makes other teams like know he's there. But I say that we don't need Ryan Strome as much as we did a year ago with Panarin. So, maybe Cop fills a slot there. So big game against the Devs tonight. Assuming Igor's in net after Georgiev had a beautiful shutout against the Canes. That was a big time game. Chris
One of the
Perry,
best ever.
Best ever. I was like, wow, right before the trade deadline, this guy's putting his value at top. He might have played himself into the backup role, staying where you're like, oh, we can't get rid of this guy if we're going to actually make a cup run. So it was good and bad seeing that. So, but we could figure out the Rangers. I think Jory even mentioned that he's going to figure out something with Georgiev over the summer. So that gives us a little more time. Big game against the Devs tonight. Steve, who do you want to see score first?
Who do I want to see score first? I mean, you always got to hope that somebody gets their first goal in their first game.
The new guys.
So let's go with Cop or one of the new guys. But I think to what you said, someone or what you had said about Braun reminded me that like depth roles are going to be important down the stretch because you're going to lose somebody. So I'm a fan of it for those reasons as well. Again, you had mentioned that we didn't move any of the bits of chemistry that we have, and even guys like Hedel, that it would feel like we're giving up on something that we still maybe has more to their game, whereas maybe Barron, we kind of knew what the ceiling was looking like for a guy like that, and hopefully I hope the best for a guy like Morgan Barron. I hope that not that we get the worst of the trade, but I hope that the Jets have a spot for this dude and he could just flourish. But we, on the other hand, need more of a veteran role in that back end. So I'm a fan of the trades for those reasons. And for, like you said, we're not really rocking the boat and giving up too much. And even if that condition is met with that pick, I don't think any of us are mad if we go.
I'm not mad if we get to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's been a while. 2015.
So that's what I think I'm excited for coming into tonight. And I think what we want out of tonight is we want that fourth line to buzz. Something tells me they're going to be a chop saw, dude. I really want, Mott cramming the boards, Revo cramming the other side. I want a dirty, greasy goal out of it. So I want some real fourth line action for sure. It's a rivalry game. I know the boys get up for it. It's another game that doesn't have a huge Cackle matchup, so it loses a little bit of that shine. So I think maybe a little bit of that playoff tenacity, because we know the deadline is over now. This is what we're going with. This is the roster.
This is the guys we got.
Yeah. And I think you play Igor, like you said. I think you play Igor because you can't afford to let this guy just kind of sit. So even a game like the Devils, he's going to be sharp. He's going to be on. He's not going to want to lose regardless of the opponent or play lightly. So that's what I'm looking to see. A big night from Igor, low scoring game for them. And maybe 3-1, 4-1. That'd be great.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree more, Steve. Is there anyone you wish that we did get in the trade deadline that we didn't get? Is it the guy behind you?
No, like I got into it with somebody online about just like it just really wouldn't happen. Now with Kako being out long term, this does kind of change the scope of maybe what I would have been looking at. But you have to be realistic in assuming that whoever you're getting, long term, you have to be willing to, and the Florida Panthers were in a weird spot. They wanted to get rid of a guy like Vetrano, and it makes perfect sense for us to give up what we did to get him. So I'm not mad at who we acquired for those reasons. And a guy like Miller would have been cost controlled for a year after that, and then it gets really complicated. And you don't want to give up too much. I'm hearing that I'm hearing. I'm not an expert, but I'm from what it sounds like, the asking price for some of these guys was just too high, and teams chose to hold on to them because they're not technically in a year where they have to really worry about that just yet in the Canucks. So if you're the Canucks, I think it makes more sense to hold on to Miller, and he's playing the best hockey of his career, unquestionably. But all that being said, you can't bring in a guy like that that's not going to play in those upper echelon minutes, assuming that when Kako is healthy, that role is his. And you don't move on from a guy like Buchnevich, who would have probably made the same amount as Miller in the 5 mil to 5.5, maybe 6 range, assuming he took a deal with us to stay on the team in contract negotiations. Maybe we got the feel that he wouldn't have, but I feel like Buch would have stayed for relatively close to what he and Miller are making now, and it wouldn't make sense for the first move to be made to get him out of there if the intention wasn't always to put these young guys in that role to kind of flourish, especially for a winger. Now, if you felt like Strome wasn't really necessarily going to sign and we were already going to commit $5 million to Strome, it makes perfect sense to try to get a guy like Miller if you're going to unload a guy like Strome. But assuming the Canucks wanted no part of that, I feel like there's a lot of reasons why we didn't get a guy like Miller, but that's why he's up there today.
I wish that we got Ricard Raquel. I like him. I think he's got good value. I'm actually more upset that he went to the Pens than us not getting him, because I think that just is a good depth signing for them. It's typical Penguins move. Get better right before the deadline to load
They
up.
never run out of money, it feels like.
I'm like, how do they always have picks and somebody to give? And they don't.
Yeah.
They always give like players when they get another player too. They don't do just players or just picks. Like they always have someone that another team wants and is like, okay, we'll take that player in like a 4th rounder. That's fair.
I think Aston Reese is a guy you can't go wrong. I like him, but the Penguins always seem like they build up a guy maybe because he plays with other talented players. So we'll see if he actually
They
does.
sell them while they're high.
Well, right, and like maybe this meant that a guy like Hedel would have been going the other way, or somebody that we were uncomfortable with losing at the time. So you never know where the contract negotiations are. And aside from a guy like Hedel, who do we have that's a young guy that we're really comfortable getting rid of? It kind of surprising actually when you get into contract negotiations with a team like the Jets rather and say you're interested in Barron and we'll talk cop. I think you make the thing work instead of maybe the trade negotiations went Hedel's the starting point or like I said, outside of Hedel, who's young, who's expendable.
Yeah, I didn't know, maybe Gauthier.
Well, I think that says where his value's at, and he'll probably ride the bench for a couple of games here now. But you didn't clear the cupboard also, like you mentioned. We didn't get rid of guys like Kraftstoff and Kraftstoff and guys like Nils Lundqvist and Braden Schneider. It would have been really easy to move on from some of these.
Bring in some vets and sell some of these young guys, but
that might still be ahead. Who knows? I mean, we're in contention right now, which is great to see. I think we're clearly.
Like I said, I think Drury's smart with the hockey. Like he's not messing with the chemistry. See what we got right now in the playoffs, and then if it doesn't work, then you break it down a little bit and you got to restart. To get past these other teams in the East.
This is like a field trip for a good class. Like we're going to the playoffs, and everyone's going to be on their best behavior. And this is going to be a learning experience. And all the kids are going nuts. And you're just like, hey, listen, it's going to be learning. And I think it's going to be great, man. I think this is the reward that a good year gets you, is that, Jury says, listen, I know what we need. Maybe not necessarily all of what we need. I'm not saying that this means cup. I remember the year that the Penguins signed Jerome McGinley, or they traded for him, or something happened last minute, and they go, just give this is the general manager at the time, just give us the cup now. It's like, I'm not saying that, man. We're not at that point yet. I think we're really close, and I think we're closer than other people would imagine. And any given Sunday, brother, man, like any time that you're on the ice against an opponent in the NHL, is you have a chance. So I think we're a better hockey club than we were a week ago.
Agreed. All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Thank you, Steve. Let's go Rangers. Hopefully we get a big win against the Devils tonight.
Let's go Rangers.